Hey, what's up guys? Little man with the big opinion here. Today's video, I'm covering a news article and I have finally upgraded my technology so you'll get to see the article that I'm discussing. This one comes from the DoD website and the title does a fairly good amount of telling you what's going on. Um, I've got a few notes. It's really about a 2-minute read. So if you wanted to read it for yourself, you can just type in this title and it would pop up, and probably two or three other dozen articles would pop up from every mainstream source that does the news. What you can see here is 90,000 service members are participating within this. The official statement says this alliance will demonstrate its ability to reinforce the Euro-Atlantic area via transatlantic movement of forces from North America. It is titled Steadfast Defender 2024. Will be a clear demonstration of our unity, strength, and determination to protect each other, our values, and the rule-based international order. It's going to last until June. Its specific focus is a multi-domain exercise that will consist of a series of national, multinational, large-scale live exercises conducted across various geographical locations. The last thing that I will add in this, and this is also part of their official statement, it will show that we can conduct and sustain complex multi-domain operations over several months across thousands of kilometers from the high north to Central and Eastern Europe, and in any conditions, because, and they also quote in here, they're doing this because they want to defend every inch of NATO soil. It goes on to mention all of the different countries that they're going to be performing these exercises in. It ranges from, there's about 15 countries on the list, mostly in Eastern Europe. It'll be interesting to know if any of the countries that are planning to join, if they'll get involved a little later on. The article goes on, which just lets you know, I've got the same article. Ooh, that's not a really good, camera doesn't like to pick that up, but that was just more from the same article that I have pulled up here. It goes on to mention that they are using, the next generation fighters. So they're planning on using the F-35s. There's going to be hundreds of different types of vehicles used within this, different command modules, different defensive pieces of equipment. And I found it interesting the way they worded the end of this. Barney style, they're worried about Russia. They specifically say that they are planning this exercise based around a fictitious Article 5 scenario triggered by a fictitious attack against the alliance launched by a near-peer adversary. And then they mention NATO exercises are not directed at any country. And then the very last paragraph of this article talks about Russia's war in Ukraine and the information that they are gathering from that war to kind of help shell out this operation. Now, what I'm going to add to this. NATO does these missions essentially every year at varying levels. I've had buddies within the 10th Mountain go and perform exercises with, dozens of other mountain warfare units in Switzerland. That's where they picked. They did all this training there, and it was, thousands of soldiers that got involved in that. I remember I was in high school when JDAM 15 happened. A lot of stuff happened across the state of Texas where they were more focusing on, developing urban warfare. The Navy does missions all the time, the Air Force does missions all the time, and, you know, it's kind of par for the course. It is interesting that this is the, largest amount that we've seen, and you have probably seen other videos out there where people talk about, they bring up the term World War III, Civil War, civil unrest, we're getting close to the end times. So I wouldn't, what I would say is I'm not overly worked up about this. It seems like it's going to be, similar military exercises as what's happened before. They can technically use any and every piece of their country. It typically riles up Russia. If they're doing anything close to the Russian border, Russia tends to move troops, close to the area because, this is a, perfect scenario to stage a bunch of troops in to kick something off. I don't think that's going to be the case, but you really never know. The other thing that I would add to this is if the excuse me, if the United States is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this operation. I don't know the exact number, but it sounds pretty nice for the video. And other countries are spending millions of dollars on this operation. They're committing a pretty significant force to this. Then we as preppers should also be doing similar things. They're essentially doing a 6-month FTX. If well, the first process of this has already started with a U.S. Oh, it specifically says, I think the USS Gunston Hall set sail from Norfolk, Virginia. So the mission's already started. That's, the first stage of it. So us as preppers should probably be planning our own FTXs within, our individual self, within our family, within our mags. It was a couple weekends ago at this point that myself and 3 other members of my mag, we went out camping. It really wasn't much of a, like prepping type of weekend. We do it 2 to 3 times a year, and one of them we keep mostly within just, amateur camping. But we still are using the skills that we've learned, using the skills that we've picked up throughout the year to get us better prepared. So this time we had a very heavy focus on, setting up shelters very quickly using paracord and tarps. It was cold. We went at the early onset of the big cold snap that we had this year. The last day that we were camping, to have about 2 inches of snow on the ground in Texas is pretty impressive. And we had a few nights where it did get, I think our lowest night was 11 degrees. So it got fairly cold. The equipment that we have worked well, when it comes to our sleeping systems. The system that we had in place for food worked out very well. We learned a few things, like one of the trees that we had cut down was maybe a little closer to rotting than we thought it was, and so it was very smoky wood. And the way we had the shelter set up, we didn't have quite the amount of ventilation, and we kind of got smoked out a little bit. And so we had to deal with the cold, go get more firewood than what we already had, and it was a learning opportunity. Didn't spend as much time as we wanted to, shooting firearms, but we we put together an FTX in adverse conditions, and all of us survived. All of us enjoyed it, and we've planned out our summer one, and still looking for a good weekend to do a spring one because it's kind of difficult to get us all together. But the whole point of that story is we're training. I hope that y'all are training as well. If you're not, we're still at the beginning of the year. There's plenty of time to, plan these things out, even if it is just you. Maybe you haven't set your tent up in a while. Maybe you haven't set your tent up in the dark. So do you have a nice enough flashlight that you can set it up in? What if you're trying to set up a tent and you don't really want people to know you're there? So do you have a red light to set your tent up? Or can you set your tent up in the dark? If you haven't done that, maybe on this next trip, focus on that. Depending on where you're camping, one of the trips that we went on, all of us brought out our Sawyer Mini, our iodine tablets, and a way to boil water. And that entire weekend, we went down to the spring-fed creek and collected our own water instead of bringing in, 5-gallon jugs of water. Our, wargaming process is we've almost got a permanent shelter set up, so we'd like to put water storage out there and some sort of rain collection. That way, we're not even worried about going down to the creek. Now we're just purifying that water that we have on hand. And we're also not worried about, one person carrying 2 5-gallon jugs, and it's the worst fireman carry that you can think of. So each of these trips, for us, we are building on our levels. We start out here, and then the next time we move up a step, and then we move up a step. And, we're constantly improving. For one, our bug out location. For two, the time that we enjoy out there. And any step in the right direction, I would say, is a good step. And you need to determine, how quickly you want to work on this. We are planning just a range day. Those are fun and those are enjoyable. But there are lots of sides to, putting together these field training exercises. We did one not so fun one where it was 10 items in 10 days. And we really only made it to about day 6 before, we were just surviving, and, we kind of bit off more than we can chew, but it also showed us that in theory, we could have gone the whole 10 days. We looked at the equipment that we had, figured out, maybe we could have changed out this item. Maybe it would be better instead of buying the $20 version of something, maybe we would get the $50 version of something. Or instead of, having one of this, maybe it's a good idea if we had 2 of this. Figuring out all of these different pieces of the puzzles. All that being said, I'm not too worried about this. I do think it is something worth mentioning. So if you hadn't heard about this, leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on it. If you have any questions, you can ask me those as well. And I typically turn your questions into a video. If you got a friend or family member that benefit from these videos, share the channel with them and I mix it up a little bit. You should also subscribe. And with that, catch you in the next one.